Alrighty, now it's time for something completely different. I just picked this up at an auction, as a local auction here, and it is a pulse jet, if you're not familiar. Basically, you got spark, you got fuel, you got air, sucks in through some reed valves, and then it explodes in here and then shoots out the back where it sucks in more air and fuel. And that's just the really simplified rundown version of it. I've kind of been wanting these for quite a while just because they're cool. But they've always been a little out of my price range. I mean, you can get them on eBay anywhere from 200 to $1,000 depending on, the model, I guess. But again, for me, for those of you who don't know me, I've said this many times before, I'm kind of cheap. And even on the low end, to spend $200 for a toy to play around with once in a while for no reason, $200 is just a little bit much for me to justify for something like that. But at auction, I got this for $50. Actually, less than $50 because, well, technically 55. Anyways, it was in a lot with some other stuff. It had a model rocket. It had an old vintage Cox 049 helicopter thing, plastic bag with a couple of other little two-stroke engines and some propellers, and this. So probably all that other stuff was worth $50. So I got this for free if you want to look at it like that. But if we take a close look at this, the front will unscrew. The front is just aluminum. This is the fuel and air intake area, and it also holds the valves. Actually, that's loose. Well, the bolts, yeah, there you go. The bolt's loose. So if we take this part off, and this has never been run. I mean, it's very obviously like brand new clean. But there's the valves. These are just spring steel. And so as the air and fuel goes into the front nozzle here. This is to start it. You could use a bicycle pump, and that just blows air back and sucks the fuel in. And then it comes out these reeds, and the reeds open and allows that fuel-air mixture to go into the combustion chamber. And that will just come off. It's just a little bit stuck. I don't want to mess with it too much because I don't want to risk bending or breaking those. Because these will, over time, crack or break, and they're a replaceable item. I've seen these on eBay for relatively cheap. This basically just holds it on and allows them to open. And then you've got a spark plug in front. Now this is just a normal Champion, I forget the size, 3/4 inch maybe, spark plug. But it's been a little bit modified. The side post, they take that off, they cut that off. And you can get a spark igniter unit they make for these things, or you can build your own. I'm planning on using one of these. You can get these on eBay for, I don't know, like a couple of bucks each. It's just called a high voltage generator. It takes about 6 volts in and changes it to, they claim, 40,000 volts out. I highly doubt it's 40,000 volts. Might be half that. But this is basically a taser module. I talked about these on a previous video quite a while ago, but you just put 6 volts on those wires and you get a nice hefty arc out of those two. Again, it's basically a taser module. On eBay, they don't sell it as a taser module. They sell it as a DC to DC converter. But this is what I'm going to try to use because I have one. If it doesn't work for whatever reason, I don't know why it wouldn't. It makes a nice spark. But if this isn't quite what I need, then I'll get something else. For fuel, just takes regular gasoline. And nothing special there. And again, that just screws together. And obviously I'm going to have to mount this on something. Now with static running, you really shouldn't run it static for any more than about 15 seconds because it will overheat. If you put this in a model where it's moving, the airflow will keep it cool. I've seen people use like leaf blowers to keep them cool as they're running. But before I build a test stand and get it all running, which will be a different video, I'm not, we're actually leaving later today to be out of town for the weekend. So I'm going to be, out of the shop for several days. And I don't know when I'll have time to actually build a stand. Hopefully next week I can get a stand set up, get a little tank and the igniter set up, and actually try to fire this thing off. That'll be a separate video. But before I get into that, I need you guys' help for a second. If for any of you who have experience with this, this also came with this manual. And it talks all about, rockets and jets and cool stuff. There's some drawings of stuff. The table here we'll get back to here in a moment. And then when you turn a page or two right here, it says instructions for the Tiger Jet M1 engine. And I'm thinking, oh, that's the engine I got. Well, there's also the the M2 engine, which is just a little bit smaller. And of course, that's in millimeters. And of course, right away, I measured mine, and mine's longer than that. So mine's not the M1 because it's longer than 470 millimeters. Mine is, this is the only thing I have to measure with that has metric on it. This is 53 and a half. So this would be 535 millimeters, right? Is that math right? So mine's 535 millimeters. Now, if you go back to this first page where they give dimensions and specs on a whole bunch of others, these are all in inches. And when I measure mine, and for one thing, I don't know if I'm supposed to measure from the front of the aluminum part to the end of the tail, or if I'm supposed to include that nozzle sticking out. I'm assuming from the front here. If I measure from the front there, of course, you can't really assume with stuff like that. If I measure right from the front, it's about 21 and a quarter millimeter. 21 and a quarter millimeter. Overall length, 21 and a quarter. That says it's the Dynajet RH. Man, my eyes are getting bad. From USA. And overall diameter, 2.5. Now my overall diameter is 2.5. So that makes me think that that's what this one is. But when I weigh it, this says weight 16 ounces. Mine weighs 27 ounces. Or I'm sorry, mine weighs 20 ounces, which would say, okay, well, that's that one. But that's way longer than what mine is. So I'm thinking maybe my scale's off or this is off or something. Or maybe you're not supposed to weigh it with a spark plug. I have no idea. But going back, that's close, I guess. But dimensionally wise, if I just look at dimensions, that's the one I've got. Now, I really don't know anything about these. I know of them and how they work, and I know about them. I've never actually run one before. But I don't know anything about, like, manufacturers of these. So if any of you know for sure that is the one I have, let me know in the comments. There's a couple of videos on YouTube about Hobby King's Pulse Jet, and this has no markings on it. And the Hobby King Pulse Jet, I don't know the dimensions of that one, but all the videos of the Hobby King Pulse Jet don't have this. And I don't know if this was on it new or if this was added by the previous owner. I mean, those welds are not all polished up like the rest of this is, so I'm thinking maybe that was added by the previous owner. So if any of you know for sure if any of these came with that plate on it or not, would be nice to know for sure. But, oh, and you know what? That might be the extra weight. That might be what it is. So that might be the extra weight, meaning why this weighed more than the one here. So that's probably what that is. I bet somebody added that. I'm sure those welds are strong enough to hold it during a run. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is the Hobby King one. The videos of the Hobby King one, I think that looked more like it was brass. But again, there's no markings on it. So yeah, if any of you know for sure exactly what this is, and if you have any tips and tricks on starting around, I mean, I read the instructions. I know like what kind of fuel you have to have, and the fuel has to be slightly below the intake, but no more than half an inch below. So, stuff like that, understanding, blowing the air from the bicycle pump or an air compressor in here, and stuff like that. I kind of get that, but never done it before. So if there's any gotchas or any tips or tricks that any of you know of, or if you know exactly what this is, please let me know in the comments, and look forward to a future video, hopefully coming out in a week or so, of getting this thing up and running. So until then, as always, thanks for watching.